not necessarily reflect those of Vegas AllNet Radio, its affiliates, or its parent company.
It's Tuesday afternoon, 3 o'clock, right here at VegasAllNetRadio.com. I'm absolutely positive.
All right.
There we go.
Then we're on the right track then.
It's time for Stars of VANR for you right here at Vegas AllNet Radio. And here, the host of the show. I don't know where everybody else is at. Ricky, we know he's recouping. Aaron, where's Aaron at? He cut a trail today?
Well, he hasn't sobered up yet, so.
All right. John J. Pegstodge, your host today. Bobcat behind the board.
How
you doing, man?
I'm doing good.
Had a good long vacation?
I had a great long vacation and almost didn't come back.
Why is that?
Well, I didn't miss you.
Okay.
So, Stars of VANR. We're here every week to talk to the show hosts here on Vegas AllNet Radio. And today, we got some guy, I don't know, it's politics or something like that. Veterans in politics. And we have one half of the duo that is going to get us kicked off for about 30 minutes. The other, your better half or your other half or your significant partner in crime or whatever you want to call it, said he'd be here at 3:30.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Steve's a retired Marine. I messed up a few times over the years and called him a former Marine, and well, you don't ever do that.
Don't ever do that again.
No, and I haven't since.
Because when he gets here, you're going to be in the middle.
Exactly. I really appreciate everything Vegas AllNet Radio has done for us. It's very enjoyable every Sunday to come in and do the show, and we have a lot of fun. Steve and I have been friends for, it's been a long time now. I first met Steve Sanson in 2007. When I was running for the Nevada State Assembly, he had me on the show once, and ever since then, I'm a political junkie. I don't necessarily like politics, but
it's a necessary evil, right?
It is, exactly. Yeah. So, I enjoy doing the show. Steve's a great guy. Rubs people the wrong way sometimes, just like I do, and
that's why I like him.
Yeah, and I think that's
my
why
kind of guy.
and I think that's why him and I get along.
If you can't stir it up, what's the point of doing it?
So it's very enjoyable to do the show, and just everything you guys have done for us here. It's a great venue, and I don't know. I just have a lot of fun doing it.
Good. Well, that's your show is the kind of show that we like having here. We're here to give back to the community. The veterans have a very soft spot in my heart, of course, and so I'm glad to see a show like this on. How did you really get started? Did you start this from the beginning with Steve, or did he have the show, brought you on, and then you said, I'm hooked? Or
well, actually, Steve from what I understand, Steve started. He started actually hosting a show. I believe he can correct me if I'm wrong when he gets here, but I believe he started in, I want to say it was like 2005 is when he started it. When I first came on the show as a candidate, I was a little caught off guard, to be honest with you. I was running for the assembly, and I did all of my homework before I came on, and I did research on every veterans issue. I knew everything about the new veterans hospital and all this stuff. And Steve asked me a lot of questions, and basically I didn't think any of them had to do with veterans issues. And it kind of caught me off guard because after the show I asked him, I said, well, we didn't really talk much about veterans issues. And he goes, well, if you're going to be an assemblyman, those are all veterans issues.
That's right.
So he goes, we're asking questions here to try to kind of see, how your personality, how you're going to relate, and when veterans need something, are you going to be there to help the veterans?
Exactly.
And that's kind of the approach I take when I interview people. I kind of leave the actual specific veterans issues up to Steve, and I dig more into the actual policy issues.
Right.
And it's just worked really well for both of us. And like I said, some people don't like the way how harsh Steve is, but I find it enlightening.
Well, somebody has to. Somebody has to ask the tough questions. And, the thing that I personally like about the show is that it's not a fluff piece. Anyone who comes and sits in this seat or the seats in here better have their stuff together. Because if they don't, he's going to let them know.
Yeah, and Steve and I kind of have the same mentality on that part too. If you can't handle Steve Sanson and Jim Jonas, how are you going to represent us?
Exactly.
Let's be honest. We're actually a lot nicer than when you actually have to go up there to, whether it be Carson City or you go to Washington D.C. You're going to deal with some real harsh issues, and you got to be able to speak your mind, stand on your beliefs, and that's basically the gist of the show. We just try to get a feel for how people tick, and some people like it, some people don't. But I enjoy the show.
Right. What do you have a favorite guest or someone that came on that you just got finished with the show and said that was the best guest we ever had?
Well, to be honest with you, I can't really say I've ever had a favorite guest. One of the people that I do...
How about an unfavorite?
And I was going to kind of tie that together. One of the most interesting people that I find to interview is State Senator Tick Segerblum.
Really?
We don't agree on the color of this guy, ideologically. But the one thing I do respect about him, he's very passionate about his beliefs, and he stands up for them.
Right.
And sometimes we get guests in here that maybe are a little more agreeing with me on my ideology because, I'm a registered Republican. It doesn't mean I always vote for Republicans, but I tend to lean that way.
You must be having a tough year this year.
Yeah, yeah, I am. And so, but, he comes in here. He always shows up. When he says he's going to be on the show, he's here.
Yeah. He's
on time. He's very honest with his viewpoint. He sticks up for it. He stands by it. And, even though I disagree with him on a lot of things, I can really respect that guy for that.
But that's what makes this country what it is,
Yeah.
supposedly. That's what's supposed to make it, is that we can disagree on issues and still try to work together for the betterment of everyone involved and not just a select few.
Yeah, and I think that's to be honest, I think that's the thing that's really hurting the country right now is like a good example would be Obamacare. Obama came in like most presidents. I mean, he's not any different when you think about it. When he ran for election, he was saying he wanted to be a uniter. He wanted to, get everybody together, cross the aisle, do what's, everybody come across the aisle to do what's best for America. When you think about Obamacare, President Obama passed his health care law with not one Republican vote.
That's correct.
He couldn't even swing Senator Snow in Maine, and there's not any hardcore Republican that actually thinks she's a Republican.
Right.
He couldn't even get her to cross the aisle.
Why do you think that is?
I think it just honestly speaks to the true divisiveness of the political culture in this country right now. It's gotten to the point where both parties, Republican or Democrat, really don't give a damn whether it's good for the country or not.
No, and I agree with you on that point that it's just, well, they like it, we don't.
Right.
And that's it. It doesn't matter who it's good for, who it's bad for. It's just, no. It was their idea. Even if I took your idea and gave it back to you, you would fight it just because I gave it back to you, which is ridiculous. So
yeah, and I think that's really... When you look at it, and it didn't just start with Obama. I mean, this has been going on. Honestly, I think it's been going on since the Clinton administration.
Yep.
I mean, I really do, and it's unfortunate, but that's just the way politics works now. And
it's the golden rule.
Yeah,
he who has the gold rules.
Yeah, so it's unfortunate, but hopefully, we can get back to. I always kind of speak to Steve about, because Steve was kind of giving me a little bit of hard time about, oh, you actually like Senator Segerblum and you guys don't even get along. And I'm like, well, I don't agree with a lot of his issues, but if I'm not willing to get along with somebody, then we can't sit down. I mean, at least he'll get, we can have that conversation,
Right.
and we can figure something out. Much like if you go back years ago, you start looking at Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill. Those two ideologically were completely different.
Right.
But, they both had the same mentality, like, we'll fight each other.
They respected each other.
Yeah, we'll fight each other
Right.
on issues
Right.
from 9 to 5, but after 5 o'clock, we'll go out to the bar, we'll have a couple drinks, and that personal relationship that they built, they were able to do a lot of good things for the country.
And that's what our politicians, I think, have lost, is a mutual respect for each other, and it's just, no, you're on that side, I don't like you. So what is it? What is the gist of your show? What if you had to come up with a sentence to explain your show?
Well, basically, the gist of the show is to try to enlighten veterans so that they can actually make informed decisions on who to vote for. So that's why we try to vet candidates to come in, so that we can enlighten everybody to understand that this is how these individuals that are running for office, it's how they think. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, it's up to them.
Right.
But we try to get it to where for too long, veterans, once they've served, they're just tired of politics, because at the end of the day, through their whole military career, for the most part, they're led by politicians.
Right.
And they have
they have no say in the matter.
Exactly.
Right.
They have no say. It's just, if somebody tells you to do something, politician tells you to do something, you have to do it. And God bless them for being willing to do that, because that's what actually makes the military work so well, because they don't have the right to question, and they don't.
Right.
And that's something that speaks to their character. So once a lot of people leave the service, whether they retire or just leave after their first term, second term, whatever the case may be, they kind of just, they're done with politics. They just don't want it anymore. So,
especially combat vets.
Yeah. So at Veterans in Politics, what we're trying to do is try to bring those disenfranchised veterans back in and, give them some knowledge and get them back into the system, and basically bring them back to realize that, you didn't like a lot of the politicians and some of the stupid stuff they made you do when you were serving. So now's your opportunity to be educated, stay educated, so that the veterans that are now serving, or the people that are in right now that are serving, they don't have to do, they don't have dumb politicians making law or making decisions for you that you didn't like.
Right.
So that's basically what we try to do in a nutshell, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's my purpose.
I think we're going to go to a break here, pay a few bills, and then we'll come back and we'll talk to Jim again. So, see you then. Welcome back to Stars of VANR. And we're here with one of the stars of Veterans in Politics. And Jim, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your history, where you grew up, what color was your first car? Let the people out there get to know you a little bit.
Well, I was originally born in Hot Springs, South Dakota. Hot Springs, South Dakota is about 60 miles south of Mount Rushmore.
So Hot Springs, South Dakota would be above freezing. That's why they called it Hot Springs?
Yeah.
Is there anything hot in South Dakota?
Yeah, actually, the reason why it's called Hot Springs is because there is actually a hot spring that runs right underneath the town.
Cool.
Yeah. Lived there till I was 9, almost 10, and then, it was 1986. Just like anybody else, we had the construction boom here in Las Vegas. My dad was a construction worker, so came out here for the money, and
I probably knew him.
And we drove here in a 1985 Ford pickup truck, and everything we owned was in the back of it. And got here, and the day we got here was 110 degrees.
Yeah.
And all of us thought,
We're gonna die.
Yeah, what are we doing here? And for the first couple years was kind of a struggle because the company that my dad had worked for moved to California, and my mom said, there is no way I'm raising my children in California. So my dad had to go out and find another job, and he was making $5 an hour, supporting 5 people. So
wow, that was when, in 1986?
Yeah.
Holy moly.
So we lived in a 1-bedroom apartment for 3 years.
Wow.
Ate a lot of goulash.
Yes, been there, done that.
And
thank God for top ramen.
yeah, and then after that, went to Clark High School, graduated in 1995, played football, and won a state championship in 1993.
Cool.
That was a good experience.
What
And,
position did you play?
well, in high school, I actually played defensive line. And then I decided, I was going to be an NFL player,
Right, of course.
everybody thinks you're going to be.
Yeah,
So
I'm
I
gonna be a
went,
big radio star someday.
yeah, yeah. But then, so I, obviously didn't go to Division I. I had the grades too, and I had a bunch of offers from like Division III schools and stuff like that. But I wanted to go to the NFL, so I decided to go to junior college instead, and I went and lived in Victorville for 6 months, worst 6 months of my life. And but you know what? I got a lot of life points out of that. I learned a lot living on my own for the first time, and I realized, how much my dad and mom actually sacrificed for us.
Right. How old were you then?
I was 19.
Wow.
And then after that, came back, went to CSN. Then I went to the University of Phoenix, where I got my bachelor's degree and then my master's degree, both in business. And my grandfather and grandmother, both that are now deceased, they were both Korean War vets. And one of my uncles was actually served in the Vietnam War. And so, veterans were always very special to me. I think the reason why I'm so passionate about veterans issues in general is because in 1986, when I turned 10 years old, Ronald Reagan was the president.
Right.
And he always talked about American exceptionalism and shining city on the hill and how supportive he was of the military. So, starting to get a little emotional, but that's basically why I'm so passionate about veterans issues.
Cool.
And sometimes on the show I get a little caught off guard because some people go, well, thank you for your service. And I'm like, well, don't thank me for my service because I wasn't.
Right.
I've never served in the military.
Well, and I think that's what people sometimes forget is we focus on the veterans and sometimes forget about their families and what their families and their loved ones went through while they were in combat. And that can be just as traumatic. I know it was for my family. And so they do fit into that envelope. And I think sometimes we forget about that. So I'm glad that somebody's giving those people a voice from time to time.
Yeah, and that's what, and it's kind of hard because I get a lot of criticism about my foreign policy stance.
Yeah, I was going to talk to you about that after the show, but
yeah, well, no, but I do get a lot of criticism about it because, well, if you care so much about veterans' issues, their families, and all their pain and suffering, why do you come across as such a hawk on foreign policy?
Right.
Well, my thing is this. If America doesn't lead, who will? Look at the mess that's going on in the Middle East now. And I understand why they wanted to get the troops out of Iraq and pull out of Afghanistan. I get it to a point, but when you're the commander-in-chief and generals are telling you, hey, we need 10, 14,000 troops to stay behind. I mean, we still have troops in Korea. Superpowers don't just leave a vacuum. We can't do that.
Right.
And as much as I hate to have to ask families to sacrifice some more and leave their loved ones over there, it's still what's right for the country. And ultimately, at the end of the day, they did sign up for it.
Right. But I don't think that they signed up for the treatment that some of us got when we returned. And
No,
I think
absolutely.
that's where shows like yours, I think, is important, is if you're going to ask the youth of your country to go and make these sacrifices, then you damn well better take care of them when they come home.
Yeah, that's why the Veterans Administration, in my opinion, is just, well, personally, I just don't care for bureaucracies in general. I think there's just way too much oversight, and sometimes stuff gets missed. But I don't understand why we're not putting more effort into the. I mean, all the wounded people that come back, we're not putting enough effort into taking care of those individuals.
That's correct. We don't have the resources. We don't have the funding, and where does that funding and the resources come from? It comes from Congress, and that's where, as far as I'm concerned, the fault lies, because I personally benefit from the VA, the hospital, and the clinics here in the Las Vegas area. And I have gotten better care from them here than I ever got from any private insurance company, when I was working.
Right.
So I know that other parts of the country are not as lucky. We got a great hospital here. We got a great new clinic that's I can almost walk to from my house. The doctors and nurses and medical personnel that I have come in contact with here, I give glowing reports. Now, I have friends who are veterans in other parts of the country that are going to die because of what's going on in their neck of the woods. So it's just you can't make a blanket statement about the VA sucks or the VA is great, because it all depends on. I mean, I found that the caregivers here care about what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's obvious to me when you go in there that you see that. And I think that's what it comes down to. And areas do get, I just can't take it anymore. I'm burned out.
Right.
I can't take care of my patients. I don't have the resources. I don't have, whatever, the facilities. So I think that's where we need to put some effort in. And so it's up to you guys.
Yeah.
And Steve, I want you to make that happen.
Well, and so to clarify my statement on that, I'm typically not one that makes blanket statements,
Right.
So I probably shouldn't have done that.
No. I agree with you to a certain point.
Right.
I mean,
but here's where I'm coming from. This is the reason why I made a blanket statement I shouldn't have. But and I didn't put this in when you were asking me to talk about myself. But my grandmother, that's a Korean War vet, 1985, had a debilitating stroke, and living in Hot Springs, South Dakota is like. There's roughly like 2,200 people that live there. But there was a VA hospital in Hot Springs, South Dakota. And my grandpa actually retired as a fire chief from that VA. Well, they closed it down. And then after that, to get any of her care, they had to drive to Casper, Wyoming.
Right.
In order to get her care. And it was very hard for my grandfather at that age to get her up, move her around, and it was just it was a real struggle to get her the care she needed, and that was pretty frustrating for me personally. But I can understand overall. I mean, if you got a big city like Las Vegas, you might be putting a little more resources in than you would a 2,200.
But that's why the VA just in the last year has issued vets cards that we can use if we're in an area where we've got to drive a certain distance to get care. We can go to a local doctor or a local hospital or whatever and receive the same care. So, they're making strides. They got a long way to go, a long way to go. But, they are addressing some issues. And I'm not defending them 100% because there's some real idiots there. But anyway, sorry. Let's talk about you.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, so basically in a nutshell, the reason why I'm so involved in veterans and politics is just because, just as a general statement, I don't think a lot of people, especially young people that I talk to, realize that when they go to sleep at night, these individuals are the reason why you can sleep at peace. And I don't think they get that.
No, they don't.
And, you know, you're not going to get to every single one of them, obviously. But what we try to do is just, you know, teach and educate people. And then the big thing that we do here at Veterans of Politics that I'm very proud of is in our mission statement is to expose corruption.
Yes.
And just like when we played the commercial that I put down, you know, here's the thing. I don't know how many times we've had guests on, and they talk about veterans are the most important people, and they're going to do this, and they're going to do that. And this is why when we do our endorsement interviews, we have it taped and on YouTube.
Right.
So if you say you're going to do something and you don't do it,
we got the backup.
And you come in here like Paul Anderson did,
yeah,
and he did nothing of what he said he was going to do, well, then you know what? We're going to go after you because there's nothing worse than somebody that says they care about veterans and then they do the exact opposite.
Yeah. Well, there's a group that we work with from time to time, the Honor Flight, which raises money to fly the World War II veterans back to D.C. To see the War Monument. And it's the last couple of times that we've been there, it's been very brought home to me that these are the last of the World War II veterans. And people need to know that story and what's happened. And there's too many people alive that just, oh, that's in the movies, you know.
Right.
So anyway, I think it's about time we go to another break, if that's okay with you, Bobcat.
Whatever you'd like, sir. You're doing a fine job today.
Thank you.
There you go.
All right. We'll see you on the other side. All right, Jim. Welcome back. Now we're going to have some fun. What's the one thing that you want the listeners to know about your partner, Steve?
The one thing I want the listeners to know about Steve, honest, trustworthy, and if you don't want to hear the truth, don't ask him.
I like it. All right. What's the one thing that Steve doesn't want anybody to know that you know?
Honestly, I can't answer that question. I don't really know.
Okay, he's not here, so you don't have to be afraid.
No, seriously, I
No.
don't really know. Because, well, here's the thing. It's interesting about Steve. He puts everything out there, so he doesn't really keep secrets that I'm aware of.
Okay.
And if he does, he's never told me.
Yeah.
So
then he's good at it, right?
Yeah.
So, do you have any idea where he might be?
I don't know. With Steve, who knows? He's probably stuck in traffic.
Yeah, I know where he's at. He's probably over at the Leatherneck Bar.
Nah, I doubt it.
So what's the most fun you guys have had on the show together?
I don't know. We've had so many experiences. I can't really just I can't honestly name one that was probably the most fun.
Okay, then name 4.
Actually, what's interesting is we've had several co-hosts on the show over the years, and I would say my favorite co-host was probably Lily Bocook.
Really?
Yeah,
Why is that?
because she's feisty.
Yeah.
Like every time I would say something, I thought I made this great point. She'd go, "Well, Jim, that's not true," and I disagree. And I'm like, "Well, how?" And if you've ever known Lily, I mean, Lily's like 5'0".
Yeah.
She's 100 pounds soaking wet, but she's just so feisty about everything, you know. And those shows were really fun.
Okay.
Yeah, when Lily was on, and then Samara Knight, she's great too. She's just super intelligent.
What are your plans for the show going forward? Is there a guest that you really want to get on?
I mean, to be honest with you, the guy that the person that I'd most like to interview, and I know everybody's gonna say this, but I really honestly would love to interview Dana Perino.
Really? Why is that?
Okay, besides the fact that she's hot, she's blonde.
That's it.
She was press
Good enough for me.
She was press secretary for George W. Bush, and,
right?
And just watching her on Fox News, she's very candid, she's very honest, and I would just kind of like, and it wouldn't just be Dana Perino, just any press secretary.
Okay.
For the president, I would really like to just ask them, how do you spin this stuff? When you know what people want to hear, how do you take what the president says and then spin it into something the American people can actually believe, or you think they can believe?
Right.
Because as somebody, obviously, that likes to talk and is a communicator like myself, I would always, any PR person, for president, I would actually really like to interview.
Okay.
I think that'd be fun.
Is there one particular issue that is currently kind of a hot issue for you and Steve, or something that you're very passionate about right now?
I think, honestly, it's kind of a broad statement for me. I won't speak for Steve. With this presidential stuff going on right now and this debate and everything, I think the main issue for me right now, and especially in as far as the president's concerned, is just honesty. And just to be genuine, and someone who's, you can tell, is comfortable in their own skin. And I think that's the biggest problem that Hillary Clinton has right now, is because there's a lot of Democrats that are going to support her just because she's Hillary Clinton. But you can tell she's just not comfortable in their own skin. Where you get a guy like Donald Trump, and to be perfectly honest with you, I don't think I'm really comfortable with Donald Trump being president of the United States.
I'd leave.
Because he's just one of those guys that, like, if he's asked a question, he goes, "Well, we're going to try a lot of things,
right? And
I do great things, and I build great things,
right?
And we're going to make America great again." That's all he says.
Yeah,
but for whatever reason, the American people on the Republican side seem to really like him, and the reason why is because he's comfortable in his own skin, and you can tell he's telling the truth. He's not trying to spin anything. He's just he brands himself well.
You don't think it's just a sales gimmick that he's portraying himself this way?
Oh, it's
you don't
totally,
think it's a sales job that
Oh, it's a total
if I say
sales
this,
job.
I know I'll get this reaction, so I'm going to say it whether I believe it or not?
No, it's a total sales job. That's who Donald Trump has been his whole entire life.
Of course.
And that's but the thing that makes Donald Trump popular with a lot of people is because when they try to corner him and say, "Well, you gave money to the Clintons," or you used to be a Democrat, now you're a Republican," and he just looks at him and goes, "So what?"
Yeah.
And a lot of the general public goes, "Oh, he doesn't try to get around it. He just he says that's truth." And I think there's a...
So is that the kind of person that you think we need leading this country at this time?
Nope.
I'm glad to hear that. My respect for you has just gone up 3 notches.
I don't. I honestly don't think so at all. I think
I'm just messing with you, Jim. You know that, right?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, it doesn't matter if you are or not. I mean, one of the things is that I don't think that's the type of person we need. We need somebody who's the smartest person in the room.
Okay.
Because whoever or
who do you think that might be at this time, without putting you on the spot?
Oh, I don't mind being put on the spot.
Okay. Putting you on the spot. Who do you think would?
Honestly,
who do you think our next president should be?
Marco Rubio.
Okay. And why do you think that?
Just, he's the same way. I mean, he's comfortable in his own skin, but he's very principled. And when he's asked a question, he tells you what his beliefs are, whether they're popular or not.
Okay.
But at the same time, you can tell there's a genuineness about him. Like, even if people don't like it, he'll say it. With Donald Trump, it's different. It's almost like when he's asked a question, you can see the wheels turning with him.
Right.
Like,
how can I get the best reaction out of this?
Yeah, what don't they want me to say? And I'll say it anyway, and then I'll brag about, well, nobody else would say it. Right.
So and I'm just using Marco Rubio because you brought him up. You say that he is genuine and he says what he believes, and you think that would make a good leader. So if I believed in the spaghetti god, and I firmly believed that, and I said that, you think that would make me a good president just because I stood up for what I believed in and told the truth?
Well, it depends on whether I believe in the spaghetti god or not.
Okay.
If I don't, then I won't vote for you.
Okay. So Marco Rubio, just because he says this is what I believe, and that's the point that I'm trying to make.
Right.
Shouldn't we be looking at policies and issues rather than individuals and how they come across? I mean, that's what I look for in a candidate, and I haven't found one yet that I can really get behind. Well, I have, maybe, we'll see, but let's talk about the issues. Let's talk about not veterans are great. We need to do something for veterans.
Right.
Okay, what are we going to do for veterans? You tell me what we're going to do for veterans. Then I can get behind that individual if I agree with what they're saying, but not just because they say veterans are great. Do you see the difference that I'm trying to make there? And that's
no,
okay.
and I absolutely agree. And I think that's one of the problems with the political process right now, is because I'll give you a good example. And we had a guest on. His name's Assemblyman Lynn Stewart.
Right.
And I really have a lot of respect for Lynn Stewart. I don't agree with him typically on, a lot of his votes, but he's a good guy, and he's always treated me well in the past, and he supported me when I ran for the assembly. But right after the show, we thanked him for coming on, and we're like, well, at least you didn't do this or that, whatever, to paraphrase.
Right.
And then he goes, well, that's why you never make pledges. You don't pledge anything because you never know what's going to happen.
Right.
So as far as the policy stuff goes, I think that's where everybody's at right now, is because they don't know what's going to happen. Now, as far as Marco Rubio is concerned, I think the thing that makes Marco Rubio unique is that he actually does talk about policy to a point. Like, I agree on his stance on immigration. I think it's realistic what he's saying. He's not talking about like Donald Trump. The 14th or 16th Amendment is, it's not legal. We'll overturn that. We're gonna deport 11 million people. Well, that sounds good, but everybody knows you're not gonna do that. Marco Rubio says, well, if they're undocumented, and they should serve a penalty for it. So he's actually come out and he's actually been pretty stern on his immigration policy, but realistic at the same time.
Right.
And I think, but honestly, I think that's the only policy that he's actually given in any speech. Other than that, it's basically he sends out emails.
Right.
Because I think everybody is so scared to actually give out specific decisions because you never know what's going to happen. Like, a good example is George W. Bush. When he was running for president, he said he wanted a more humble foreign policy. Well, then September 11th happens, 9 months into his presidency. Now all of a sudden, he's talking about preemptive wars. So I just think that that's kind of the thing that politicians are afraid of now, is because they don't really want to make commitments because they don't know what's going to happen.
So that would mean that what we're looking for in a politician is somebody who's flexible and can change their mind on a moment's notice. And I'm just trying to discuss this with you.
Well, I think actually,
here's my plan. This
Right.
is what I plan to do, and I hope if everything stays the way it is today,
Right.
this is what we're going to do. However, I'm going to reserve the right that if this happens, I'm going this way. If this happens, I'm going this way. And I don't see anybody doing that.
No, and I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
Here's the sad part. You and I would listen to somebody that said that and say, hey, great, this is a guy I can support, because at least he's giving me a blueprint of what he's going to do. But unfortunately, the people that elect the voters, their attention spans they're just not as focused as they should be. And so these politicians, what they want to do is what Donald Trump is doing. They want to be like an episode of The View, so to speak.
Right.
They're entertainers instead of giving a blueprint, because they're so afraid to give a blueprint, because they're going to be like, all their handlers and stuff are saying, okay, well, you lost them in 30 seconds.
Okay. And speaking of losing them in 30 seconds, I think we're going to take another break here. And we'll be back in 2 and 2. And we're back again. I got to tell you, Jim, you're doing an awesome job. And Steve better be careful, because you may be taking over his show if he's not careful here. You bring up a lot of good points. We got a few minutes left, and I'd really like to focus a little more on the show and what you guys are doing and how you're doing it, and what your plans are for the next near future.
Well, I think what we're doing is working pretty well right now. We're just gonna, keep booking guests, try to get more people involved. One of the things that Steve and I have talked about is maybe right now is political season.
Of course.
So
yeah.
the majority of the people we're going to have on are politicians. But one of the things that we're looking at now is like having more people that are, involved in the community. And we got some ideas from some guests, some of the people that I went to school with, and other people that have wrote books. And we try not to get too into the weeds when it comes to as far as like racial issues.
Right.
We've touched on it a little bit, as far as, especially as it comes to police, excessive force, stuff like that. That's something that Steve's very passionate about, obviously. Him and I kind of differ on a few things on that, so we've kind of backed away from that a little bit. But that's pretty much it. Just keep doing what we're doing and just try to, educate the voter the best we can and expose some of these people that are, they're not doing what they said they were going to do.
They're screwing us over.
Pretty much. And, the whole thing now is we're really focused on seeing how this whole tax increase works out. See if it actually does work.
Right.
Because education is a major thing with both Steve and I, and it's really cool that some of the stuff that the legislative session came up with, as far as more school choice, the educational savings accounts. We're only like the third state in the country that's actually passed that.
Right.
So I'd like to see how that works out.
What do you have someone, or is it you and Steve that keep an eye on the issues and what's going up before the state and some of the bills that are being proposed? Is that you guys focus on that, or do you have somebody that's kind of hey guys, you ought to look at this?
Well, Steve, one of the things about Steve is Steve has a huge network of individuals, and he focuses more on one area. I focus more on another. I look more directly towards the policies. Basically, I get a lot of text messages and phone calls from Steve, and certain bills are coming up before the legislature, and he'll text message me, hey, you might want to look into this. This is what my thought is.
Right.
What do you think? And I'll reach out to some of my friends, and then we just kind of get together and we discuss it a little bit, and that's basically how we do it. We basically are self-funded. We do our own research. And
right. Do you have is there one particular bill that you guys have gone against or for that you've been successful in either blocking or getting passed, that you think that maybe if you hadn't brought it to light that it may have gone the other way? Is there anything that you can think of?
Well, there's been a few bills that were passed that we agreed on. I think the two things one of the bills that I was really focused on is getting rid of Nevada overtime. And unfortunately that didn't happen because the Democrats decided that they weren't willing to get rid of Nevada overtime in order to raise the minimum wage, which I thought was kind of interesting, but that's how politics works.
Yeah.
The other one was campus carry. And that actually ended up getting it passed through the Assembly, but didn't get through the Senate. And that was something that Steve and I were very passionate about.
And can you explain that to the listeners? What exactly was that bill?
Well, campus carry was a bill that was proposed that if you had a concealed weapons permit,
right,
that you could bring it on to UNLV campuses or any campuses. And they ended up shooting that down.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we're getting kind of close to the end here. And Steve, we're sorry we missed you, but I think Jim did a good job in your place. Is there anything that you want to say to the listeners before we get out of here? When is your show?
Just listen to Veterans in Politics every Saturday at 2 p.m. And if you haven't listened to us, please check it out. You're going to be very enlightened. You're going to learn a lot about the issues, and and you'll have a good time for that hour. I mean, Steve and I have a real good time, and it's fun to do. And I just really appreciate you guys bringing me on this afternoon, so I can have a conversation with you.
I've listened myself, and there's been a few times when I wanted to come in here and box some ears, but I figured that you guys had it under control. So I want to thank you, and I want to thank you for having your show here on our station. Aaron's always saying that great shows make for a great station. A great station doesn't necessarily make for a great show. You guys are giving back to the community. We like to see that, and we appreciate you being here. And Jim, I thank you very much for being here today. And if we don't see you before, we'll see you again. Thanks for joining us here on Stars of VANR, and maybe next week we'll have the rest of the gang back. Bobcat, thank you, sir.
Bye.